One of the quotes that I really, really like from Todd is saying that an event is caused by error or not following procedure is like saying an object fell due to gravity. It's always true.
Always true. Yeah.
It just doesn't tell us very much.
Is it helpful?
Yeah, so it's just not helpful information. It's not that, it's not that people will get confused and they're saying, well, so you're condoning, things that just, people are not following procedure. No, the idea is that it's normal, right? And so if you're not surprised by it, then you can ask better questions. If you're surprised when you find a gap or an error, then you stop asking questions there. So being able to ask questions that aren't looking for that specifically and more talking about what does normal work look like describe to me how this goes normally. Tell me all of the, when it goes well and when it doesn't go well. Help me understand the variability, because that thing that might have brought us together, that event or that one piece of information that I took is just a piece of a much, much, much larger puzzle. And just having some open conversation, you'd be surprised how much information you can get very, very quickly, much, much faster than asking pointed questions designed to find a gap or find what should have happened. You can ask hundreds of those questions and never even get close to what's actually happening. And if you just ask a very simple question like, hey, can you describe to me, how do you work with this? Is this glass, how does this glass work for you? What do you do with that glass? Yeah. Suddenly people can tell you the story of their normal work, and that entire net of information that would be very helpful to have just comes out extremely naturally and without defense, without people feeling like they're being interrogated. And that's the information that we need in order to understand what's beyond that error, what's beyond that not following procedure, so that we can
and I think that
improve.
That comes back to the broader context of H.O.P, because H.O.P isn't a program. It is more of a paradigm shift. And as we said, it embraces concepts from all manner of different disciplines, from political science to the social sciences, to movements such as Safety Differently, Safety 2. It's embracing all these ideas, and it doesn't necessarily come to a single conclusion about any of them. It recognises the pluralism of it all. Now, when you talk about curiosity, which I think we're talking about here, is something that you've touched upon, Andrew, in your work, in your line of work in coaching, as a core element of both leadership and coaching as a style. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's funny. I think this idea, when you describe kind of fundamentally what coaching is about, you can actually describe it in a way, if you don't label it first, that people will either say, you're talking about leadership. And most of the time people do that first, right? And so one of the core requirements, if you like, that's the way that I consider it when you talk about coaching as a process, is the idea of saying, I don't have the answers. And I think it's important to actually go into that with a neutral kind of approach, where all we're seeking to do is to actually improve. Now, improve might actually mean learning, but importantly in that context, I think that the first principle, and that's where these 5 principles of H.O.P I think are really helpful to just reflect on and soak, because we have to kind of get the blame thing sorted out in our head first, as in blame is not going to be helpful here. And then once we've got that sorted out, which often we have to go through in the context of an investigation and all that sort of stuff, because often blame is a central but unspoken kind of subtext in an investigation, then we can go, okay, well, what can we learn? And then questions will really help. That curiosity will really help.
And think about curiosity in the context of due diligence. So anything that we go out there to do that's important or matters at work or as an organization, we know that information is powerful. And you know this in your personal life too. If you're looking at taking on a mortgage or a neighborhood or buying a boat or something like that, you do as much research as you possibly can to be well informed. And we have whole teams of people in every company that we work for who are doing the same thing. Due diligence about acquisitions and legal implications of new regulations and stuff like that. It's only when we get to the places where we have humans in our system messing up that we seem satisfied sometimes to just too often fold up the tents as soon as we've got that bad person staying in the middle. We should have that same curiosity and due diligence process when we're looking at human error. It'll take us to a much better place.
And that ties in with that final principle that response matters. And the interesting thing with all these workshops we've done, frontline people don't have any problems generally getting all this. Take for example a Safety 2 principle of equivalence. Success and failure, they're very closely aligned. All the same conditions in failures are all the same conditions that are there in success. Therefore, they can't be the root cause. It's impossible because they're all there all the time. So they get that. Yeah, we get that. We understand how normal work and what we call failures are very closely intertwined. Whereas oftentimes managers, middle managers, spent a whole lifetime on the black line, so to speak.
And safety people.
And safety people. So, and it's very easy to should have done this, should have done that differently. And this context, this idea of the blue line is like, whoa, what's the blue line? The blue line needs to be on the black line. So being able to kind of take a chill pill and go, okay, tell me about the blue line, because then I can learn about this and I can understand. And that's something which is a challenge for some people to really take on board.
I always tell people, I said, I can make your movie-going experience much more efficient. I can tell you to go in and buy the ticket at the cinema. Is that what we call it?
Yeah, cinema. Yeah,
yes, cinema. So. And everything sounds so much more sophisticated. Even bad, dirty things. You can go in and buy your ticket, and then leave the theater, and go out to your car, get on Wi-Fi, and do productive work, and then come in for the last 15 minutes of the movie, and you will definitely get the gist. You will know who married whom, who lived happily ever after, who was the bad person. But that misses the point, because the joy of learning and discovering is seeing the whole process. And I'm not a huge participant in social media, but this whole LinkedIn thing, and I have like 8,000 million friends who are in the health and safety and search and rescue business. And I'm just so fascinated. Every single day I can find some video clip of some, usually in a third world country, doing something just absolutely eye-poppingly crazy. And then in chime all of these, these Monday morning quarterback experts saying, well, clearly you can see this coming and this is ridiculous. But I don't think that benefits us. And I think a lot of people kind of skate by going out there after something happens, comparing that to our plan, never really questioning, is our plan good or does it need modification? We tend to think these things are carved in granite, and then come back and be able to tell management and other stakeholders, like, here's how far they were off of our idea and here's what we've done to fix it.
It's effectively like a drive-by, isn't it? I'll just drive by, take the photo, and then I'll just put it into the system, and then poo rains on everyone in the process.
Yes. Well, I think there's a real danger that the black, and this is something Bob Edwards and ourselves were talking about last week, is that the black line is often presumed to be the correct way, the way that nothing bad will happen. But in actual fact, that black line is based upon our best knowledge at the time, the plan that we had, and it may also trend towards failure. And blue line is actually representing people adjusting to correct for that failure. So I think it's very important too, because that black line, back 70 years ago, when you see steeplejacks climbing chimneys without ropes and so forth, was probably acceptable, but it was the planned line of work. But there may well be inherent problems within that plan.
And people tend not to get in trouble when given a good plan and to go out and implement that plan with the tools they need to do it, tend to do just perfectly.
Yeah.
And do it over and over again. It's when we introduce the complexity of multiple plans that were seemingly simple one-page guidance documents or rules or procedures that standing alone make perfect sense. Yes. And those are the things that we can, well, how far were they off of this guideline? But what we tend not to realize is they were probably simultaneously running 5 or 6 of those things, and there is no overarching plan that can account for that sort of complexity day to day.
But I think, is it just on that point, and the language is important, I would kind of describe that as complicatedness. Like, I would say complexity is something that exists in a system. And everyone, you talk to everyone in business now, and they go, things are getting ever more complex. So why are we trying to simplify it in our black line approach to life? And what we're trying to do ultimately is it becomes complicated the first time that the black line, or the blue line, deviates from the black line. Right. And that happens almost the second that you write something down.
Yeah. But we often focus on that blue line as, variance as being a bad thing. But actually, and this is why I think H.O.P's so important, is that it explores both the black and the blue line. The assumptions that were there both within the plan itself, and it's not necessarily putting the blue line up to the black line and making it flat and parallel. It's understanding both sides of the story, the gap, digging deep into that gap and understanding it, and helping to bring that more into alignment, not one to the other.